What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
Today we're going to talk about when your family is done with your trauma and the silent fallout of repeated stress. Now, Clint, when you and I were dating, I remember very specifically a time during our early ages when we were dating and you developed some depression. You started to have a lot of things happen because of a lot of changes that were happening in your life. And I remember very specifically telling you, like, okay, you need to get out of this now. We're not going to prolong this. I'm here to love you through it. I'm here to support you through it. And my limit for that on a personal level, right? I'm not talking professional level, is very minimal. And for me, my back history is that I was raised by a mom who was super depressed my entire childhood and my entire adult life. And I could never envision myself being married to somebody, which we were dating and then getting ready to get engaged and then getting ready to get married. And all of that happened within 1 year. And I remember having those conversations with you about, okay, we need to change this now. Let's strategize.
Yeah, I distinctly remember having that conversation, and the reason why I remember it because that was almost a recognition for myself as like, hey, I need to pull myself out of this shit. And being able to have that conversation with one another and being able to start learning, okay, well, what's causing this? What's the root cause and why am I feeling this way? And being able to work it out with each other, got me completely out of that mindset.
Yeah. And I mean, you opted to get on medication because we thought that was the thing to do because that was the only thing to do back then. And that lasted for, I don't even think a week.
Yeah.
And then you kind of shaped out of it really quickly. And I don't remember giving you an ultimatum, and it might have been like a silent conversation and understanding between us that like, this isn't going to happen if this is, what I'm getting myself into, and that didn't mean that I was just going to like throw you away or anything. I tried everything that I could to make sure that we both together kind of sifted out of that together. And you did very quickly.
Yeah. And I think, having those conversations, because all that conversation took place and the recognition of where I was going and what I was having the problems with at that time, like you said, is having the medication. Thought that was the avenue to do it. And even the doctor wasn't necessarily for me getting the medication for it. But once I started taking that and realizing the side effects of everything, that was almost not only the change in my whole mindset when it comes to like prescriptions and dealing with medication, but it wasn't for me. And then quickly after I got off of that prescription, I was like, this is stupid. I'm done with this.
Yeah. And I think that you made a good point, and that is that you didn't recognize things at first. So I think that we can quickly go over some signs that your family might be struggling with your trauma. I think that one really big indicator is that they avoid asking about your day. So they've learned that even a simple question might lead to things like negativity and even emotional shutdown. So they simply don't ask.
Yeah. When you start shutting yourself down from almost the general aspects of life, it's almost this rabbit hole that there's always a fear of negativity. There's always this, you don't know what's going to trigger you to go down that rabbit hole.
I'm thinking about somebody who used to be a first responder, and something that he's voiced to me is that those conversations no longer exist between he and his spouse because I think that both of them have kind of shut down in that way. So that isn't to knock anybody. For me, in my opinion, that's information. Like, it's great news when you know what the problem is. And another thing too is that sometimes they can become emotionally distant. So it could be a spouse or a child. They might start to pull back. Maybe they're sensing that they can't compete with the weight of the things that you're carrying.
Being able to articulate it out in a healthy way is so important. And I think if you just keep holding on to that that heaviness of that trauma it's going to kind of compile. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill. It's just going to grow and grow and grow until it finally comes to an end.
Yeah, and that end could be something like increased arguments or even silence. So when tension builds quickly, or worse, it could be that nobody even wants to talk about anything anymore.
Yeah, and you don't want to shut out your spouse, your family, when it comes to just having a loving, caring relationship with one another.
Something too is that if you have kids, they might start acting out or even avoiding you altogether.
If you start reserving yourself, they're going to it's almost like an animal in this instance. Is they sense your negativity. They sense that withdrawal from you to where you're like, oh, dad's in a bad mood. Mom's in a bad mood. Let's just go stay away from them for right now.
I mentioned that example about something negative being great because it's information, and our partners will give us cues. And a lot of the times they come in these phrases that are repetitious. So your partner might be expressing burnout or resentment if they're saying things like, I can't keep doing this, for example.
Yeah, being able to recognize that information, and I look at it as like I'm building a case. I'm building a case. You're gathering all this information, and what is that information telling you, and how can you compile all that information and use it to benefit you?
Yeah, and all hope isn't lost if you find yourself in this position. There are a lot of ways that we can help to be able to rebuild that connection and sort of ease that emotional load a little bit. And I think one of the first things is to be able to acknowledge the impact. So let your family know that you see the stress and how it's affecting them, and then even validate things to be able to open that door to be able to start healing.
And it's not easy to bring this forward or bring this to the table because especially, and I think that's where it's so important, to where I've been so fortunate to have Ashley, talk with me and bring me out of this environment and being able to recognize it, because sometimes you might not recognize it yourself. And it's having love and support from family members and or your spouse and them being able to highlight it for you.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but establishing a transition routine after work, like playing music, praying, walking, working out, just something that you can do to be able to reset your mind before you even walk through that front door. And also, I think setting boundaries around trauma sharing is super important if you find yourself in a vulnerable situation like this. So maybe instead of trauma dumping, something crazy happens when we ask for permission of somebody. So if you say something like, are you emotionally available right now? If that sounds too corny, then change it to something like, I have something really heavy. I just wanted to know if it's okay with you if I share it right now. If not, it's totally fine. Maybe we can revisit it tomorrow.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean right now is a no forever. It's just, everyone needs to be in the right mindset depending on what the situation is. Something
else that you could do, Clint, you and I like to spend money, go shopping, things like that, but schedule intentional, lighthearted time together.
Yeah, having something to look forward to and just to get out of your normal routine and your environment, because those stressors add on more and more and more. But if you can just get out and take a break from all reality per se, and because that's when opportunity for change happens.
Yeah, and I think too, something that adds to this that I've been noticing that over a week now, because you've been home, is being intentional with the things that you have around you that already make you happy. So for us, we have been paying a lot of attention to our dogs, and they have just been incredibly amusing lately. And I think that they've picked up on it too, because they've been doing things that kind of feed into our amusement. So just being very present with the things that already exist.
Yeah, having that time, finding something that, gives you enjoyment, gives you happiness, and being able to kind of fully embrace that, because when you fully embrace it, whatever it may be is going to embrace you back.
Something else that a lot of people struggle with is getting outside help. So some people don't like the whole sterile environment. I totally get that. But there's a lot of ways to be able to get outside help. And it could be something formal or informal. So doing things like going to therapy, maybe asking for a chaplain support, couples counseling. There's a lot of things like that. But also you can have let's say I'm thinking one of your partners, Clint, and if you two go out and you do something together, that in itself can also be incredibly therapeutic. Even if you're not feeling the need to discuss the thing, just having somebody who understands you and is in the same sphere of influence and who just gets it, you tend to have these silent conversations.
Yeah, being able to share that experience with one another, even though you're not talking about it, even though you're like in the same environment because you're around the same people that you work with and that you're around, but it's the opportunity's there if you want to talk typically, but not all the time. It's just being able to have that shared experience together.
Yeah, and I mean, as a first responder, you're trained to handle trauma, but your family probably isn't. So the longer that you ignore how your job is affecting them, I feel like the greater the risk is of emotional fallout and even relationships breaking down. And of course, that could lead to things like isolation. So it's super, super important. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.